Well, a positive development there for the health sector. Well, we want to talk matters to do with the solar power in the country, bearing in mind that Kenya remains one of the economies in the region that has been struggling to adjust to the fast-growing demand for energy. And I'm now joined by Sneha Shah, who is the General Manager for East Africa for Azuri Technologies. Many thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Abby.
And Azuri is not a new company for many people, especially those who watch KTN News, because you deal in matters to do with the solar solutions. Perhaps looking at where we stand right now, last I checked, you are rolling out some interesting products around home solar and pay-as-you-go television. Perhaps what is the uptake so far?
Yeah, so we've been around in Kenya for the last 3 to 4 years. And during that time, we've been experimenting a lot to make sure that we get the business model right and making sure that we have very sustainable partnerships to grow. And over the last 18 months, we've really accelerated, and the take-up has been fantastic. We hear about the economic issues in the country over the last 3 months, but the last 3 months has been some of the highest install rates that we've had.
All right. Speaking about high uptake, the size of investment you've made in the Kenyan market is quite substantial. Yeah. And have you been able to reap the return on your investment?
So we are long-term investors. Myself, I come from the telecoms industry where I've spent the last 20 years. And what I see today is what we saw regarding mobile 20 years ago. And that's the potential we see with pay-as-you-go energy. Mm-hmm. So it's early days, but and we've chosen to invest in the market for growth. And when we're ready, when we've achieved a certain scale, then absolutely we will be reaping the returns.
And reaping returns in an environment where consumers perceive a product to be overpriced. How do you tackle this, especially when it comes to pricing?
So pricing, we are very, very competitive. We're making the products very, very affordable for the rural market to the extent that we're the only company who don't charge any deposit whatsoever to get a customer started. Mm-hmm. And then they're paying a daily equivalent of as low as 50 shillings a day. So we're very, very sensitive to pricing, and we're giving very high-value products at a very competitive price.
And you've raised an interesting aspect that you have competitive pricing. But really, if you look at the broader picture, the number of Kenyans connected to the national grid is standing at just under 5 million, mm-hmm. against a population of 10 million, working class, and of course the other deficit is in the informal sector. How big an opportunity does Kenya present for companies like yours?
It's massive. So if you look at the total population of Kenyans, it's more than 40 million. So you're talking about 12 million households. Mm-hmm. So you have around 2 to 3 million households who are currently connected to the grid. And with the last mile connectivity, that will grow. But that still leaves a good over 6 million household population that can be targeted. Currently with this pay-as-you-go solar sector, we're still less than a million. So there is as much as 5 million more households to go. Mm-hmm. And absolutely, the informal economy is what we're targeting. So we've started with lights. We've moved up the energy escalator with TV. But where we're heading is to provide productive use equipment to help the informal sector to become very, very economically active and then be able to afford the luxuries that you and I mm-hmm. afford in living in the cities.
And as we wrap up, Shena, looking at Kenya as an economy, what's your overall outlook like in terms of growth forecasts, bearing in mind you've raised very important figures that there's a huge potential? What numbers do you look to sell in the market, and eventually what does this translate to in the issues around clean energy?
So when you look at the economic growth in Kenya, a lot of it is driven by the the progress that we're seeing in big cities like Nairobi, Mombasa, etc. With the devolution, which is just only happened a few years ago, that has a long way to go, and we would be the ideal partners to play in the devolution space, because we are the ones who are targeting the rest of the economy which has been ignored. So we are very bullish that in the next 3 to 5 years, as we enrich the lives of people living in the rural areas, which is a vast majority, if that can now start contributing actively to the economy, especially through the agricultural sector, then we should be having close to 10% growth rates over the next 5 years or so.
Very bullish outlook, I say.
Yes.
Many thanks, Shena, for joining us.
Thanks.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Interesting conversation on solar power. Indeed, solar should be defining the future. Well, just before we wrap up the